For more on this, let's bring in Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor. Thanks for being here. We'll talk about the economic D-Day in a second, but to Jonathan's last point, whether something more is necessary or whether the Iranians will continue to strike out at us, we have this hijacking of a tanker that took place. It wasn't in the Strait of Hormuz. It was actually off the coast of Somalia in an area that called the Gulf of Aden. What can you tell us about this? I mean, first of all, was it directed by the Iranians? Is it part of their network of terrorists that they have in the Mideast?
Well, great to see you, David, and happy Larry Kudlow's birthday to all those who celebrate.
Happy birthday to Larry. We were saving that, but yes.
Happy birthday to Larry. I know he's delighted to be 49. And I, this shows you the reach that Iran has. And so we're looking at the two sides of the Arabian Peninsula. This is over by Yemen and Somalia, and importantly, Somaliland. And so bear in mind, not to get too weedy on this, but Somaliland and South Yemen were both British colonies, and they are the ones who are actually potentially our friends here. But what we see Iran doing is going after Somalia, North Yemen, which is where the Houthis are, and trying to disrupt shipping. So this is deeply concerning, but I've actually been surprised by how quiet the Houthis have been over the 6 months of this conflict. They really don't seem to be getting much from the Iranians that would allow them to take decisive action in the Red Sea. So, it's a concern, obviously, but it doesn't seem like it's particularly effective at this point.
All right, there's another issue, though, which is that the Houthis apparently attacked an airport and it was a Saudi Arabian oil facility. Is that a concern that they're hitting the homeland of Saudi Arabia?
Obviously, and northern Yemen borders with Saudi Arabia, and down there in Jazan and some other locations in Saudi, we do have some critical infrastructure. So that's also something we need to work with our Saudi partners on, make sure they are fully defended against this kind of a threat. But bear in mind, what this does is it unites the region against the Iranians. Everybody hates them now because they've been lashing out at folks, who might historically have been friendly to them, but now they've alienated everyone.
Well, let's talk about economic D-Day. How does this differ from, say, the maximum pressure campaign that we saw in the first Trump administration?
Oh, this builds on it. And we all know who worked on the Maximum Pressure Campaign 1.0, where they were at the end of 2020, which was down to about $9 billion in accessible foreign reserves. You know better than I do, that's default territory for a country. Now, of course, the Biden folk took the sanctions off. They actually just stopped enforcing them. They got about $100 billion during President Biden's term, but they didn't invest it. They didn't actually make any kind of structural changes. They spent it on October 7th. They spent it on their nuclear program and the IRGC. And what this has resulted in is the problems we caused in the first term. The second term, President Trump can just make those problems worse. And so this is going to be quite extraordinary if what I'm hearing is true, that we're going to level secondary sanctions at everyone who does business with the Islamic Republic of Iran. If you aren't with us, you're with them. And I think this is going to have a very chilling effect on top of what UAE has also done this week. They're just going to be completely cut off.
And yet one thing that General Keane keeps pointing out, that we've seen ourselves, is that they care not at all about the people of Iran and what they are going through. I mean, there is pressure, obviously, that there were attempts to overthrow the regime a few months before the bombing started, but that ended with the brutal treatment of killing of 40,000 Iranian protesters at least. I mean, they really seem to be able to just block themselves off from any pressure at home, any pushback from the people of Iran about what they're doing. So what effect will that have on their behavior, you think?
Well, I agree with General Keane 100%. They do not care about the fact that they're running out of food. They're running out of all of their critical imports because of the blockade. That doesn't go into their calculus at all. All they do care about is regime survival. And so that is what is going to be held at risk here. They've got a lot of bills coming due in the September, October timeframe. They pay their troops, particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, I believe quarterly. That's coming up. They're not going to be able to make those payments if this program goes into place. And on top of that, we have the fact that the president has actually bombed them. He's actually taken kinetic action against them, which has further degraded them. And that makes this a problem different from what they've faced before. So it's not so much about the pain to the Iranian people as their ability to maintain any kind of regime, kind of cohesion, if you will.
And they also do seem to have lost complete control of the Gulf, or the Strait of Hormuz in the northern part. If we can put the map back up on camera, the northern part, the actual Strait of Hormuz is where they had essentially taken control for a couple of weeks, if not months, up there on the let's see, at the top of that picture. The bottom of the picture is the Gulf of Aden, and that's where the pirates were attacking that one tanker, and there may be more of that to come. But is it fair to say that the Iranians have lost control of the Strait of Hormuz right now?
Yes, and bear in mind, I mean, there's still a nuisance. They have to be watched closely. They did fire 2 ballistic missiles at UAE earlier this week, so no one wants to discount their ability to reach out and touch us if they want to. So we have to be on our guard. But it looks to me like that southern channel, which goes by Oman through the Strait of Hormuz, is entirely in U.S. Control. And so we're moving about 10 million barrels a day out through that. We've got 7 million barrels going through Saudi Petroline. You know, there is no crisis of supply for the oil market. I know folks are risk averse, and that's driven prices a little bit higher. But our supply, especially with the United States at record production right now, that's not the problem at all. And so I think Iran has really done themselves a great disservice by trying to close the Strait of Hormuz, by now having to endure this blockade, which is so damaging to them. It was a terrible move.
Victoria Coates, great to see you, Victoria. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll pass on your good wishes to Larry when I see him next. Appreciate it.